In the United States, when we observe, it's called World Day of Prayer for Consecrated Life. So I'm just going to talk a little bit, give you kind of like the 5-minute overview of consecrated life, particularly my vocation, which is one of the rarest ones in the church. As Father said, I'm the only one right now currently on active duty serving, but the vocation is growing exponentially. Your home diocese probably has 1 or 2 of us tops. My name is Lieutenant Commander Victoria Selkirk. I'm the dietitian for the base. I'm over at the hospital. Been here almost 5 years. I love speaking about my vocation. I don't really get a chance often, especially in just my daily work, but I'm going to kind of give you the overview today. So just to kind of sum it up, and the bulletin gives you a good summary too of different forms of consecrated life. Most of us know of religious sisters. That's one form of consecrated life. And then there are other ones. There's consecrated virgins, which actually we are the first form of consecrated life in the Catholic Church. We're the most ancient. We've been around since 300 AD, so we preceded religious sisters by centuries. And then women eventually were getting martyred. They were getting killed living as consecrated virgins, so we went into community and became religious sisters. But consecrated virginity still does exist. And actually, as I mentioned earlier, it's experiencing an upsurgence. You also have consecrated hermits. These are women that live in their homes and pray for the church full time. And then things called apostolic societies and secular institutes. The oldest form is a consecrated virgin. It's been around since the time of the apostles, and it's actually Mary's vocation. If you kind of probe into the history of Our Lady, she was presented to the temple at the age of 3 to essentially take a promise of virginity, perpetual virginity. So Our Lady was the first consecrated virgin, and then we had scores of female saints that followed in her footsteps. I'm sure you've heard of these saints. These saints all were consecrated virgins. They were not religious sisters. St. Agnes, St. Maria Goretti, St. Agatha, whose feast day we'll celebrate on Monday. She was martyred because of her virginity, if you look in the story. Same thing with St. Cecilia, St. Philomena, St. Margaret of Hungary, St. Eulalia, and then St. Lucy. There's actually one named St. Victoria as well, which is my namesake. These women were not religious sisters, and they didn't live in a cloister or a community, but they're just as validly consecrated as a religious sister. Obviously, you see I'm not wearing a veil. Technically, canonically, I can, but it's not practical as a naval officer to be doing that. These women were known, especially back in apostolic times, as sacred virgins. So if you ever go through the catacombs in Rome, if you look on the doors, oftentimes you'll see an SV. That was a consecrated virgin, Sacra Virgo. These women have been around forever. I'm just going to talk about some of the distinctive aspects of it. For one, consecrated virgins in some communities are actually entitled to wear a stole and a manacle, which are vestments otherwise reserved to clergy when they do live in religious communities. There are about 300 of us in the country right now. There's thousands across the world. Europe has a ton. And we specifically are commissioned to pray for our clergy, to pray for the church. We're here to pray for you. We live amongst you. I don't live in a community. I'm out here in the world with you, serving on active duty as well, which gives me a lot of opportunities to pray for you all. I'm going to talk about my experience specifically. 7.5 years ago, on the Feast of Corpus Christi and the Vigil of St. Joan of Arc, who's my patron saint, obviously being military and a virgin herself, although she wasn't formally consecrated. I was formally consecrated under Catholic Canon 604 in the Cathedral of Fresno by my bishop. From the earliest eras of the church, the bishop has been entrusted with the spiritual care of the consecrated virgin. Bishops are the only ones with the keys to be able to consecrate a virgin. A priest does not have those faculties. So the rite of the consecration Mass, if you actually see it, it's one of the oldest liturgies in the church. I highly recommend, if you have the opportunity to attend this Mass, which they always invite the entire diocese and all the priests, I highly recommend you attend. It has, it's very unique. It has portions of it that look similar to an ordination. We also prostrate, and actually there's a picture in the bulletin this week on the cover when I was doing that. We prostrate in front of the tabernacle for the Litany of the Saints. And then the consecratory prayer is prayed over us. Really distinctive about a consecrated virgin, the one vocation in the church that can never be dispensed of. Religious sister can be dispensed of her vows. Priest, although as Father had mentioned earlier, ontological change occurs, he can still be laicized and go back to secular society. Consecrated virgin can never happen. Even the Pope cannot dispense him once the consecration is bestowed. because, as I explained in the bulletin, there's a little blurb for me, the consecration is bestowed completely unilaterally. I'm a passive recipient. I present myself to the bishop, prepared to live a life of virginity. The bishop prays the consecratory prayer over me. It's considered a nuptial bond to Christ. It can never be dissolved, even by the Pope. It lasts into the eternities. If you look from an eschatological standpoint, so from like in the future, we will all be married to Christ, which is why we're called the bride of Christ. Consecrated virgins are living that life now. So when the consecratory prayer is prayed over us, we also have an ontological change that occurs that creates in us the image of virgin, bride, and mother to the church. So that's kind of one of the distinctive things. And one of the things that I find just so beautiful about my own vocation is the fact that you're all in. Once you do it, it's done. It's annotated on my baptismal record that I'm never eligible for sacramental marriage because you can't annul a marriage to Christ. I'm married to Christ. I have a nuptial bond. So I want to mention, so just from a military standpoint, I'm active duty like most of the people in here. I think it's really important that we focus on the saints that are wonderful patrons for us, one of whom is St. Joan of Arc. If you look into her history, which I strongly encourage if you get a chance, read her story. This woman had made a perpetual vow of virginity to Christ. It is church dogma that the brilliance of this 19-year-old's military strategy was because of the vows she had made to Christ. Okay, and of course she was martyred because of this. So keep that in mind, and I would just encourage you all, whatever your vocation is, whether you're called to marriage, whether you're called to the priesthood, whether you're called to the permanent diaconate, whether you're called to religious life, you want to go into a community, to just remember the sanctity of your body. Everything that we do, everything that we offer Christ is done through our bodies, hopefully upholding them with the dignity that Christ has endowed us. Just keep that in mind. And the last thing I just want to say is that if anyone is interested in discerning either religious life or consecrated life, I do know quite a few religious, although obviously I'm not in that form of consecration. I'm more than happy to help. If anyone would like to talk with me further, please do. And know of my prayers for you, and please pray for me too. And thank you.